My fiancée demanded I gift 5% of my company to her parents as a wedding present. When I refused, she lied, saying, I agreed. But I canceled the wedding and exposed her manipulation with evidence that left everyone speechless. I'm 33 years old. I founded my own tech consulting company from scratch like 7 years ago. And I need to tell this story because there are still people who think I'm a selfish idiot for what happened with my ex-fiancée Isabella a few months ago. The truth is that when I started dating her like a year and a half ago, I thought I had found the right person, the one you share values and goals with, and all that stuff that's supposed to matter when you're thinking about getting married. Isabella was 29 when we met at a tech conference. She worked in marketing for a big firm, and at first everything was perfect. I mean, we had chemistry, we laughed a lot, and she seemed to understand how important my business was to me. I had spent years building this company, literally years without sleeping well, investing every penny I had, sacrificing social life and everything else to turn my idea into something real and profitable, and when it finally started working well, like really, well, I felt I could start thinking about other things besides work. Isabella came from a family with money. Her parents were the Colemans. He was something like an executive at a pharmaceutical company, and she didn't work but was on 1,000 boards and charity committees. And at first that didn't bother me at all because Isabella never acted like a spoiled rich kid, or at least not at the beginning. We got engaged after a year of dating, which maybe was fast looking back, but at that moment I felt super confident about the decision, and she was super excited. She started planning the wedding immediately with her mom and all that stuff. I was busy with a couple of big contracts that had come in right at that time, so basically I let her handle almost everything about the wedding, which was probably my first mistake. But well, at that moment it seemed logical because she had more time and also loved that kind of thing. The weird signs started like 3 months before the wedding, which was scheduled for June, and this was in March, more or less. Isabella came to my apartment on a Saturday morning. I was working on my computer as always because weekends were when I could catch up on administrative stuff for the company. And she walked into the kitchen where I was and sat down in front of me with that face you make when you're about to ask for something important. She told me she had been thinking about what to give her parents as a thank you for all their support with the wedding because they were paying like 60% of the expenses, even though I had offered to pay my share. But her dad had insisted it was tradition for the bride's family to cover most of it. And then Isabella just dropped on me, just like that she thought it would be an incredible gesture if I gave her parents a stake in my company, like a small percentage of the shares, as a wedding gift. I sat there staring at her, unable to really process what she had just said, because in my head I was thinking, did she just ask me to give away part of my company? The company I built myself from scratch? The company I literally invested all my savings and 7 years of my life into? I told her I didn't quite understand what she was asking exactly, and she explained, super casual like she was talking about the weather, that her parents had mentioned it would be nice if they could have a stake in my business, that it would show I considered them family, and that I trusted them, and that also it would be a good investment for them and beneficial for me to have investors with experience. I explained to her, trying to stay calm, even though inside I was already feeling that weird sensation in my stomach, that company shares aren't casual gifts, that giving equity in the business means giving decision-making, power and control over something I had built completely alone, and that also my other minority partners, who were basically 2 friends who invested initial capital years ago, would never agree to that without a real business reason. Isabella got all defensive immediately and told me I was being overdramatic, that she was only talking about like 5% or something, nothing that would affect my control of the company, and that it was basically a formality to make them feel included in our new life together. I explained again that it didn't work that way. That 5% was still a lot considering my company was valued at several million at that time, and that also the point wasn't the percentage, but the principle of giving away equity in a business that had cost me everything to build. She got angry, accused me of not wanting to include her family, of being selfish with my money even though I had never been that way with anything else, and stormed out of the apartment saying we'd talk about it later when I was being more reasonable. I thought the subject had ended there, that she would understand after thinking about it why my answer was no. But like 2 weeks later, I got a call from Isabella's mom, Mrs. Coleman, and from the tone of her voice I knew something was wrong. She started the conversation telling me she wanted to personally thank me for the generous gift. Isabella had told her I was giving them, that they were very excited to be part of my company, and that her husband was already talking to his accountant to see how to handle all the paperwork for the shares. I froze, literally froze, unable to speak for several seconds, because what the hell had I just heard? I told Mrs. Coleman, trying to sound as calm as possible even though inside I was about to explode, that I think there was a misunderstanding, that I had never agreed to gift them shares in my company, and that I needed to talk to Isabella immediately about this. Isabella's mom got all confused and told me that Isabella had told her like a week ago that I had accepted and that I was super happy to have them as partners, and I had to explain that no, that I had specifically said no to that idea, and that Isabella knew perfectly well my position on it. There was a super awkward silence, and then Mrs. Coleman said something like, "It must be a misunderstanding and we would all clear it up together." But I could hear in her voice that she was upset, like I was the one who had caused the problem by contradicting what her daughter had said. I hung up and called Isabella immediately, and when she answered, I asked her directly why the hell she had told her mom that I had agreed to give them shares when I had clearly said no. Isabella tried to minimize it, saying she thought I would change my mind if I saw how important it was to her and her family, that she had wanted to get ahead so her parents would be excited and I would see how they reacted, and that basically she hoped that would convince me to do it. I told her that was pure manipulation, that she had put me in a horrible position with her parents by lying to them about something so important, and that she needed to call them immediately to clarify that I had never agreed to anything. She started crying and begged me not to do it, that she would look like a liar in front of her parents, and then that's when she completely changed her tone and told me, super serious and cold, that if I wasn't willing to make this gift for her family, then maybe we should reconsider the whole wedding because clearly I wasn't as committed to our relationship as she thought. I stood there in my living room with the phone in my hand thinking, is she seriously giving me an ultimatum? Is my fiancé threatening to cancel the wedding because I won't give away part of my company? I told her I needed to think things through and that we'd talk later. And the first thing I did was call my friend Gregory, who's like my brother practically and has known me since college. And I told him everything that had happened. Gregory listened to everything without interrupting me, and at the end told me, "Man, you already know what you have to do," and he was right. I mean, deep down, I already knew this was a giant red flag the size of a building, but I needed to hear it from someone else to confirm I wasn't being irrational. The next day I called Natasha, who's my lawyer and also a friend for years, and I explained the whole situation to her. Natasha is one of those people who tells you things straight without sugarcoating them. And she told me that under no circumstances should I gift equity in my company as a personal gift, that it could open up a bunch of legal and financial problems later, especially if the relationship with Isabella or her parents got ugly in the future. She explained that if they wanted to be investors, there were correct ways to do it, with contracts and professional valuations and all the appropriate legal process, but that gifting shares just like that was basically crazy from any business standpoint. She asked me if I really believed Isabella had lied to her parents by mistake, or if I thought it had. I've been intentional. And when she put it that way, I realized that obviously it had been intentional. That Isabella had tried to manipulate the situation to pressure me into doing what she wanted. That same afternoon, I went to Isabella's apartment. She lived alone in a place her parents had bought her in an expensive area of the city. And when I got there, she already knew why I was there, because I could see it on her face. I told her my final answer was no, that I wasn't going to gift company shares to anyone, and that she needed to call her parents immediately to clarify that there had been a misunderstanding and that I had never agreed to anything. Isabella got super angry, started yelling at me that I was selfish, that all I cared about was my company and my money, that I didn't understand the concept of family and sharing, and that her parents had been incredible to us and deserved this gesture from me. I responded that her parents hadn't done anything for my company, that I didn't owe them anything in business terms, and that the fact we were about to get married didn't mean I had to give away my assets to her family. Then Isabella threw the final ultimatum at me. She told me that either I agreed to give the shares to her parents or we could cancel the wedding right there, that she wasn't going to marry someone who wasn't willing to make sacrifices for her family. And that's when something clicked in my head, because I realized she really expected me to choose giving away part of my company over losing her, and that made me see that Isabella didn't know me at all. Or worse, she knew me but didn't care what my company meant to me. I told her, "Okay, cancel the wedding, because I'm not doing this." And she went quiet, looking at me like waiting for me to take it back or something, but I didn't say anything else. After like a minute, she told me she was giving me until the end of the day to change my mind, and I just left. That night, I called the venue where we were. I'm going to have the wedding and canceled everything. I lost the deposit I had given, which was like $5,000, but honestly, I didn't care at all in that moment. I called the closest guests to let them know the wedding was canceled. My family was super supportive when I explained what had happened, and my mom told me to be grateful I had discovered what Isabella was like before marrying her and not after. Isabella started calling me like at 10 at night. I guess someone had told her I had already canceled everything, and she left me like 20 voicemails saying I was being dramatic, that we could talk things through, that she hadn't wanted it to come to this, but I didn't answer any of her messages. What happened next was probably the most disgusting part of all, because Isabella started a complete campaign with our mutual friends to make me look like the villain of the story. She told everyone that I had canceled the wedding because I didn't want to share anything with her, that I was a cheapskate, obsessed with money, that I had never been really committed to the relationship, and basically painted the whole situation as if I were a selfish monster who had left her days before the wedding for superficial reasons. Several friends called me to ask what had really happened, because they knew Isabella and knew something didn't add up in her version, and I explained everything exactly as it had happened, including the part where she had lied to her parents, telling them I had accepted when it wasn't true. My friend Melissa, who's mutual and has known Isabella for years, called me specifically to ask for my side of the story because she said Isabella's version didn't make sense. When I told her everything, from the initial request to the ultimatum and the lies, Melissa told me she wasn't as surprised as she should be, that Isabella had always been kind of manipulative and had grown up used to getting what she wanted from her parents. She asked if I had any proof of what had happened, and the truth is, I did. I had text messages where Isabella mentioned the shares and the conversation with her parents, and I also had the record of Mrs. Coleman's call thanking me for something I had never promised. Melissa suggested I share those messages with friends who were only hearing Isabella's version because it wasn't fair for her to go around destroying my reputation with lies. So I did something Isabella probably didn't expect. I sent a group message to all our mutual friends explaining exactly what had happened, without dramatizing or exaggerating anything, just the facts as they had occurred. And I attached screenshots of the relevant conversations where it was crystal clear that I had never agreed to give shares, and that Isabella had lied to her parents about it. The reaction was immediate. Several friends wrote me privately to apologize for believing Isabella's version without asking me first. And some even told me that Isabella had been pressuring them to stop talking to me and that they had felt something was weird about that whole situation. Gregory told me I had done the right thing by defending myself, that I couldn't let Isabella keep lying about me without consequences. Like a week after I sent that message, I got a call from Mr. Coleman, Isabella's dad, and I thought it was going to be another awkward conversation, but it turned out to be worse than I imagined. The guy started yelling at me about how dare I publicly humiliate his daughter, that sharing those messages with all our friends had been unnecessary and cruel, and that I was acting like a spiteful child. I tried to explain that Isabella had been lying about me to those same people and that I had only shared the truth with evidence, but he didn't want to hear anything. He told me his daughter deserved respect and that I had proven to be exactly the kind of selfish person he thought I was from the beginning, and then he added something that made me completely lose my patience. He said that anyway, I had never been good enough for his family, and that Isabella could get someone much better than me. I responded, keeping myself as calm as possible even though I was furious, that his daughter had lied to her own parents and then had tried to manipulate me with a ridiculous ultimatum, and that if he thought that was acceptable behavior, then it was clear where the problem came from. I told him I had nothing more to talk about with him or his wife, that they should stop contacting me, and I hung up. I immediately blocked both of them from my phone, also blocked Isabella on all social media and on my cell, because the truth is I didn't want to know anything more about any of them. Like 2 weeks after that, Isabella found a way to contact me through my company email, because there I couldn't block her without affecting potential clients. She sent me a long email, like 3 pages, where basically she apologized for everything, said she had acted horribly, that her parents had pressured her to ask me for the shares and she hadn't known how to handle the situation, that she should never have lied to them or given me the ultimatum, and that if I could forgive her, she was willing to start over and do things right this time. She added that she loved me, that she had made a huge mistake, and that her parents would no longer be involved in our decisions if I gave her another chance. I read the whole email. I read it like 3 times to make sure I was understanding it right, and the only thing I was thinking was that this was more manipulation, a different version of the same game. Because if Isabella had really realized she was wrong, she would have understood it the moment I canceled the wedding. Not 2 weeks later, when all our friends already knew the truth and she had ended up looking like the bad guy. Her email wasn't a real apology, it was an attempt to save her image and maybe get access to my money in another way. Eventually, I didn't respond to the email. I simply deleted it and set up a filter, so any message from her address would go straight to spam. Gregory asked me like a month ago if I ever regretted canceling the wedding, if maybe I had been too drastic, or if I should have tried to talk things through more before ending everything. I told him no, that not for a single second had I regretted it, because Isabella's request wasn't really about the shares. It was about demonstrating that she and her family had control over me and my decisions, and if I had given in on that, then I would have established a horrible precedent for the rest of our life together. Natasha told me I did well to stand firm, that she's seen cases where people give in on things like this and end up trapped in marriages where they're constantly being drained of money or control over their businesses. Now, several months later, I'm fine. The truth is, I'm more than fine. My company is growing amazingly. I closed 2 huge contracts last month, and I don't have the constant stress of dealing with Isabella and her family dramas. Some acquaintances still ask me what happened with the wedding, those who weren't in the close circle and didn't find out about all the details, and I simply tell them we weren't compatible, and that's it. I don't need to go around explaining to everyone what happened. The people who matter, my family and my real friends, know the truth, and that's enough. Last week, I ran into Melissa at a coffee shop, and she told me Isabella is dating someone new, a guy who works in finance, and apparently comes from a family with a lot of money, too. And Melissa told me, like laughing, that Isabella probably found someone who is willing to mix his finances with her family's, without questioning it. I'm not going to lie. When I heard that, I felt nothing. No jealousy or satisfaction or anything. It was just like hearing about a complete stranger's life. And I guess that's a good sign, right? That what she does or who she's with doesn't affect me anymore. Looking at everything in hindsight, the only thing I regret is not seeing the signs earlier, because they were probably there long before the shares request. I was just too busy with work or too in love to notice them. But well, at least I saw them before getting married, before having kids with her, before legally mixing all my assets with someone who saw my company as a family bank account instead of as the result of years of work and sacrifice. And that, honestly, is worth more than any awkwardness or drama I've had to deal with these last few months.